Kevin, today's
Yeah.
phrase of the day is not random at
Ooh.
all, but I feel like it fits for multiple reasons. This phrase is Silver Shamrock commercial. Qua? What is that you say? Let me tell you. This is the actual real plot of Halloween Season of the Witch. It was the third Halloween movie. It did not feature Michael Myers. They were trying to make like different ones that did not have Michael Myers. It did not go well. But the reason I chose it is not only is this Halloween week, yesterday was Halloween, but also I felt like it goes with our little section. So the plot of this movie was this man took pieces of Stonehenge and he put them on a chip, and then he put that chip on the back of a mask. I think there were 3 masks. There was like a witch, a pumpkin, and a goblin, I want to say, or like ghoul. But anyway, I digress. When a certain program showed on TV, anybody wearing one of these masks would become completely captivated with whatever was showing on TV, and then their head would melt into bugs and snakes. So the whole end of the movie, you're watching these little kids have their heads implode.
Oh my God.
It's a very weird movie. But yeah, but it was because it was so captivating, they couldn't look away, much like this section with our viewers.
You haven't even read that?
Wait, what are you doing with the book?
So he has the confidence to finish the story.
Hear now the words of the witches.
Can you hear the words of the witches? Yeah, the words of the witches.
Welcome to Words of the Witches, the Charmed podcast that will guide you through the lesser-known published lore of the Charmed universe.
In this night and in this hour, we call upon our fanboy power, bringing education and stupefaction to all of you.
Together, we will use our knowledge and reverence abundantly, but also find ourselves sassy and delightful.
Which is why we will truly be charmed.
Okay, spellworders. Hi, this is Words of the Witches, episode 126. I am Kevin, your resident Charmed resource.
And I'm Sean. I just like to watch random bad movies and tell people about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a poll, Sean.
Woohoo! I remember what it is. No, I don't.
It was, if there was a, because last week was about the men, so if there was going to be an essay about men, what would you want?
Yes. And I remembered I picked the brothers. Mm-hmm.
Yes. The results were, the options were Andy and Daryl, bromance, Victor, mortal dad, Leo and Cole, naughty or nice, or Wyatt and Chris, brotherly love. How do you think this went down?
I think people are gonna say the cop drama. I forgot what you called it.
Bromance.
Bromance.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll see what happened. I did get some people writing in. Well, okay, so the one that got the least votes was Victor, mortal dad, but I have had a lot of people comment on that. Legion said he picked that one. We had 9%, 13 people voted for him. And he picked that one. He's like, I would love to see what went down in Victor's history, and get more enlightened on that. So I picked these because I'm interested in all of these too. So yes, but then someone said, "Oh, Victor, you should call it Victor Deadbeat Dad because he's a terrible father." I'm like, "Oh,
wow." Okay.
And then we got a little fight about it.
Good, as you should.
But I'm like, okay. All right. And then the second one, least amount of votes, was Andy and Daryl bromance. Only 27 votes, 18%.
Okay.
Yeah. This kind of went how I figured it would go. After that, the runner-up was Wyatt and Chris, brotherly love, 41 votes, 28%. And then the winner was Leo and Cole, naughty or nice, 65 votes, 45%. Because everyone can't get over the Leo and Cole. I mean, I get it. They're mainstays. They're main characters.
Yeah. Everybody loves fucking Cole. Whatever, Cole.
I know.
Whatever.
And I put that in there because they do have a really cool bromance themselves on the show. And they do kind of tongue-in-cheek it a little bit. But I like it because this is naughty or nice. Both of them have been naughty and nice. So it'd be cool to. I thought it'd be cool to
Yes.
experience the duality in both of those characters, even though one is regulated as good and one is evil. You know.
Hmm. Good point. Good point.
So. All right. Well, let's get into this final section of the book we're covering. Totally Charmed. And this section is section 6, their viewers. And their introduction by Jennifer Cruz says, "Their viewers, we like to watch." She says, "I don't remember why I first began to watch Charmed. I just remember not being able to stop. Different viewers are drawn by different things, but there is one attraction they all cite, the power of 3. There's something about that sisterhood." There's 3 essays in here. We did not delegate those. So is there any one that you want to do in particular?
I don't want to do the last one. That's all you.
I'll do the first one here, and then we'll figure out. I guess you do the second one. I guess.
Okay, that works.
Okay. This one is Charming the Tweener by Valerie Taylor with help from Jane Finocchiaro. And it's crazy because this was author that Jennifer Cruz, the editor, just said, "Here, write me a essay about Charmed."
I feel like all 3 of these were like that. She just went to her friends and
Absolutely.
like, watch the show.
All three of these were people that she's like, "I have friends that write things. Hey, watch the show. You've never seen it before? Oh, here, watch the show."
Yeah, I thought this one. I mean, I guess I'm jumping the gun a little, but since all 3 of these are like that, at least one of them could have been like, "Hey, Kevin, as a person who loves Charmed, why do you watch it?"
Yeah. All these were from newbies that were just like forced to watch Charmed because the editor was their friend was writing a book.
Yeah.
I'm like, they could have made this a lot more interesting of a category and had people from all ranges of viewership and different types of fandom in Charmed. But
Yeah, I would have looked
You know.
for like I would have had Rachel write one because she does not love Charmed. She hates Piper and she hates Leo, and like she just casually likes the rest of the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'd have someone like
right.
that. I have someone else.
Mhm.
Okay, watch. Here's the new Charmed. Watch it. Tell me how you like it, and I'd have you write one.
Yes, it's what it is, so I'll just go with it. Jennifer Cruz wrote, "A friend of mine began to watch the show after with her very smart 9-year-old daughter after I said, 'You have to see this.' When I asked her how that was working out, her story of watching Charmed with Jane was so charming, I made her write it down because I need people in my book. I'm short, like my quota." Whatever. And Valerie Taylor, she's like, "Okay, yeah, I wanted to watch Charmed. I had my 9-year-old daughter. I thought it'd be good for us to watch together, but she was worried about the violence and the sexual sophistication of the show. She's like, oh, is this actually gonna be too mature for her?" And she went on to say this. She's like, she doesn't forbid premarital sex, but she worried about the promiscuity being promoted as normal to young girls. It's good to know that she wasn't a prude. But I guess it just at that age she would have liked her to see more sexual things as she got older and not 9.
Yeah,
So.
and I think that's valid. I mean,
Yeah.
the girls do kind of get a little promiscuous, and since it is aimed at like teenage girls, that does kind of push
Yeah.
a certain thought.
Right. So, and then they had TiVo 2000's moment. So they kind of pre-recorded these, and so they didn't watch them live. They watched them way after the fact when they were in season 7 or 8, I'm guessing. But I liked this. She let her daughter be in charge of the remote, and the daughter was flipping past anything that made her uncomfortable. What was that? Feats of Clay. When Phoebe and Clay were in bed together, and she turned to her mom, she's like, "Should I be watching this?"
Yeah.
So it's cool that she knows like that she's not ready for, what she feels is too old for her, and so she has freedom to do that. So sometimes she watched things that her mother would have assumed that she was not ready for, and sometimes she passed by things that she thought were not as bad. So it was really up to her, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's good parenting skill. I like that.
Yeah, right. She said both her and her daughter realized that the sisters weren't promiscuous, but serially monogamous. And I thought that was really interesting too. And she said watching Charmed together allowed Jane to ask questions, and it was the spark to engage in more difficult topics that, in a natural way. I remember Jane, she asked, like, "What's gay mean?"
Yeah.
And she was also worried about, like, Wyatt in Valley High the Dolls when Piper's like, I need to be alone for a while. Please, I need this. And then she's like, but doesn't Wyatt need a father?
Yeah.
And then they had a conversation about, it's like, yes, she does. Piper's being a bitch right now. But that's okay. And then Valerie thanks Charmed for allowing these healthy discussions at a time when her daughter is still comfortable to talk to her about these things and willing to listen. She's not too old that it's awkward. So she really finds this to be a very rewarding asset to their relationship now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how do we feel about this one?
I thought this one was really cute. I thought it was sweet. I think it's a nice love letter to like how media can help open conversations with children. It also shows how media can also not just be entertainment, but a tool for like opening up a certain language and dialogue. So I really enjoyed Valerie's approach to like making sure her daughter was aware of different things and different people and different aspects. And it was just really kind of a sweet little thing to read about how she came into Charmed and used it as a tool.
Yeah, I thought it was super sweet too. I'm glad that the show created this kind of bond and relationship because Jane was able to get an education about the world, and Valerie was able to feel that she was doing something right as a parent, and so it was really kind of cool. And it's different. It's similar and different because I was 10 when I started watching Charmed, so similar age, and I do think it's a perfect show for someone around that age because when I was 10, like the more adult themes in season one they were a bother to me, and whatever went over my head didn't matter. Because Charm started my 5th grade year of school, and that was the same year we actually had our sex education classes type of stuff. So I was like, the only thing the difference with me and Jane because they were binging like after the fact they were binging the show like all back to back, and I literally had to grow up with the show. I was literally aging older and older. So by the time the show ended, I was 19. So it wasn't really an issue for me.
Yeah.
But I know if I did binge it in 5th grade, I don't imagine things being that, much different in how I approached it. I don't know.
I did think it was interesting when she points out that like she counted season 1 had 18 hits talking about sex as compared to there's like 5
Yeah.
in season 5. So it's interesting like hearing you say, and this is what I thought of too, the show seemed to get less adult as it went on because they realized the younger audiences were watching it. Whereas you see like Harry Potter like got more adult as it went because they realized their audience is growing up. So I think that was interesting. It went the other way.
Mm-hmm. Right. So interesting. It's so crazy, TV and movies and media.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't watch with my parents. I watched mostly alone with my siblings, or I just figured out things for myself. So I don't. Yeah, I wonder what that would have been like to just watch with someone. And I know some people. Well, I'll get to it. But I know lots of people started when they were much younger. I was like, really? You're watching this when you're like 5 years old?
Oh, wow.
Okay, weird.
Yeah,
So.
and like to me, I was watching Buffy about that age, and like I remember there is sex in Buffy. It's not as overt as Charmed, but like you're right. As a kid, you know what it is, you know what's happening, but you're not like, oh, this is awkward, or oh, I can't
Right.
be watching this. Like it's just, oh, they're having sex, something I
Right.
can't do yet, or I'm not supposed
Yeah.
to.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to move on to the essay number 2?
I guess. All right. The Charm of Charmed by Laura Resnick. Laura Resnick. I'm saying her name over and over to waste time while I flip to the right page. All right. To get an analytical viewpoint on Charmed, I corralled a level-headed, some might even say cynical friend of mine, Laura Resnick, and made her watch the first season on DVD. This whole thing is a 90s moment. So what is it that makes this show so watchable? I asked her when she was finished. The sisterhood? The magic? The hot guys? Nope, she said. Read on. So Laura starts off, huge trip down memory lane. She talks about the difficulties of watching a show when TiVo was brand new and not everybody had it. She's like, I had to look through a TV guide. I didn't know what channel it was on. I didn't know what day it was on. I didn't know what time it was on, let alone I had to sit there at that time. I had to learn how to what did she call it? A VHS player. She had to learn how to
Yeah.
record on one of those. Like those, yeah. We lived all this struggle too. So I thought this was kind of fun to like, relive, but at the same time, I'm like, bitch, you lazy. Bitch,
Yeah.
you
She, sound,
lazy.
she sounded like an old lady trying to navigate the internet. Is what it sounded
Yes.
like.
I mean, when we start learning more about Laura Resnick, we learn that she's like a stay-at-home writer. So like she goes into a cave and like lose track of time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's hard for her to watch a show. So finally, what was her name? Jenny? Was
Jennifer
the main
Cruz,
writer?
yeah.
Jennifer Cruz tracked her down and gave her the season 1 DVDs, which had just come out at that time. 90s
Yeah, that was-
moment.
Yeah, because the 150th episode, they had a 150th episode party, and that came out at the same time the season 1 came out. So I remember that they had like
Oh,
150th
wow.
episode and season 1 on DVD together. So way late. That was like
Yay.
2005.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas now we get like the DVDs like right after the season airs.
Yeah.
Well, Laura started watching it. Laura Resnick, and she found right away that she loved the sisters' bond and their humor. In fact, she started to realize that without the humor, you start to pick apart the episodes a little bit more, and how like the lore and fantasy rules don't really jive very well. Like they don't really follow any contrived like path. At the same time, I'm like, you are watching, a show for teenagers by the creator of 90210. I don't think you're going to get realistic fantasy, but whatever. She also thought that the Book of Shadows was becoming formulaic because every episode, that's kind of the answer. They just say a cute little poem from the book and it fixes everything. I guess before I go on, I'm going to just complain a little. The only part I had a hard time with is she only watched season 1 and now she's acting like she knows everything about Charmed. So that was a little difficult. So that's where I kind of closed down to some of what she was saying. For example, she talks about in From Fear to Eternity, like Patty shows up and saves Prue from drowning, which was the way Patty died, of course. And there was no hint as to why this would happen. It doesn't ever happen again. So this doesn't make sense. And I was like, Laura Resnick, this does make sense because the sisters were stripped from their powers. So if Patty showed up as a ghost to be like, hey girls, what's up? They'd be like, what the fuck? This isn't normal. And then they had just gotten their powers back. And like, I don't know, maybe if something really big was happening, like drowning the same way that you did, yeah, you're going to show up to your daughter and be like, hey bitch, what's up? Let's not do this. Let's go this way. And then, of course, as we know, Patty does show up quite a bit from season 2 on. So that kind of like fell on deaf ears for me. I would have like, if I were writing this, I would have maybe read more up on that before jumping to that conclusion. The other thing I didn't like that she talks about is she talked about how all the sisters' romantic relationships in season 1 were boring, except for Prue, because Prue like was more of a realistic relationship with Andy. I had an internal thought, Kevin. I know I do that sometimes. It's rare. She talked about how Piper kept flipping between Leo and other men. When I think about Prue's very sure of herself. She knows this is who I am, so she gets a stable relationship with someone who works for her. Piper's unsure of herself, so of course she's not going to know what she wants. Of course she's going to keep jumping back and forth. Of course she's going to be like, am I good enough for Leo? Like, is this who I want? Like, that's very much who Piper was in the first season.
Absolutely.
And she talks about how Phoebe just kind of sleeps with anybody. She just goes for any random generic dude. And I'm like, yeah, that's who Phoebe was at that time. She didn't want anything but a good time. So she would just swipe right on the first guy available and go have a good time with him. Like, I thought that was very fitting where their relationships were in the beginning.
And even through the rest of the series, they kind of have that history and that growing path and that part of them that remains,
Yeah, definitely. So I think just watching one season and making this jump, season 1 is where you set up who the characters are and what we can expect from them as we get to know them. So had she kept watching, she would have seen that that was very on purpose that they were like this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't hate this essay like I did some of the earlier ones, but also I didn't get a whole lot out of it. Like, it was well written, and I liked her like digest of what season 1 meant to her, but it just wasn't very impactful.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. Like, it didn't bother me. She said that the strengths of the show were sisterhood and humor. She said most evil didn't leave a strong impression, and their motives could be interchangeable because they're all after the same thing. Like, sure, yeah, I get it. They all want the
Yeah.
book. They all want the powers. But yeah, it's a nighttime soap opera. What do you want?
Yep.
And she said it was harder to get through the non-funny episodes. So she really clinged to the humor because even when there was like silly situations or there were situations, plot devices that she didn't agree with, she said the humor of it all kind of kept her appeased. So she did not like, Secrets and Guys. She's like, Prue never used her power when she had the opportunity. She could have had that fixed way before. I'm like, okay. Or like in 118, she's like, that, we all know that becoming a priest doesn't protect you from harm. And I do agree with that part. I always feel like that. I talked about how I feel like that was a cheat that, they could have, if that was a reason that he would be safe, they needed to explain something else in there.
Mm-hmm.
And she loved how Phoebe's premonition power in Dead Man Dating wasn't shown as a plot device because it shows the real life dramatics and uncertainty that gift could bring. It is kind of awkward. It is kind of messy. People do think you're a weirdo when you tell them these things. And so she really liked that reality of it all. Oh, she loved that there was a learning curve with the powers, which we all know that was a great added addition. And then she said that the humor in the show distracts us from weaker fantasy elements of the series and actually makes the fantasy more well-rounded and believable. But she does say that Charmed is very much capable of making the magic relatable, which is essential. So in the end, she does come up with a positive outlook on the entire first season. But yeah, I guess based on what she's seen, it's not always as she doesn't know as much as she thinks she does.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's do this final essay in here. And this was a honker, kind of. It was like a research project, but it was cute. It's called Seducing the Charmed Virgin by C.J. Berry. And I had no idea what this was going to be. I thought this was going to give us tips on how to like get people to watch Charmed, that we want to like make people watch Charmed, our friends.
I thought it was going to help me seduce virgins.
Yeah. Oh, come, little virgin. I'll take you away. So it says C.J. Berry approached Charmed like a research project, determined to take random samplings and analyze its appeal with a clear and rational mind. Then the sisters had to blast coal for the good of humanity, and Phoebe sobbed, and so did C.J.
Yeah.
So this was another author that was roped into writing. But I think it's funny, her take. So she never watched Charmed before. She's like, hey, watch Charmed. So she's like, okay, before I do that, let me Google Charmed. What is Charmed?
Yeah.
And she's like, whenever you're tasked with writing about a show you never heard of, you have to approach with caution. So I will Google, and I learned about the premise and the characters. Okay, cool. I learned what each of these sisters do. 5.3 million viewers per episode. That's crazy. And then she went to the WB website, and she described all of the little like spots of the WB website, and I was like, yes, I remember this.
Yep, you were on every single one of those.
I was on every single fan site. I was going to the WB every week to see what kind of pictures they posted from the episode. I mean, the WB website was great, and they had really cool, like, downloadable games for your computer. You do like a whole like skin for your Windows Media Player, and I downloaded the life-size posters from there. It was a whole cool thing. So I miss it.
Yeah.
But she was curious about the demographics when she was researching. She's like, who really watches Charmed? And then she says, turns out nearly everyone in my life.
Yeah.
It's like everyone was watching Charmed but me. People I worked with for over 20 years raved about the show when I mentioned it. Even my mom watched it. How have I never heard of this show before? So that was really funny. So that was her research. She kind of split up this essay into phases. So that was phase 1, the research phase. Then she moved on to phase 2. And she's like, oh my gosh, TNT is airing the show 3 times a day. That's kind of excessive.
What?
That's cool. It's like, is it really that good? Viewing stage. So she actually watched 5 episodes on TNT. So whatever random episodes were on the couple days she watched the show is what she wrote about.
This was so weird.
It's so weird, but it's also so cool, I think, because you get to see her reaction to different things in different phases without being fully informed. I was tempted to do something like this on the podcast, like have someone who's never watched Tron before, give them a random episode to watch and see what they take away from it without any context and see how it makes them feel or if they have any questions, you know? So her very first episode she watched was A Page from the Past. And she laughed, joking about Paige's age. She's like, how far back is this? Like 5 years?
Yeah.
So she was laughing, but then she found herself moved over Paige trying to convince her parents that she's a good person. She was not prepared for the tears because she's like, I remember when I was that age and I was trying to convince my parents I was a good person. Oh my gosh, crazy, amazing. So then she's like, that was not expected. No one told me I was going to be crying watching this show. And then she went on to Once Upon a Time in season 3. And she's like, this is fun. Light stuff. Prue and Phoebe acting like children. They're cute. Cole was hot. Even Balthazar was hot. I get it. And then she's like, but then Piper giving up Leo made her burst out in her tissues again. She's like, oh my God. Then she went on to the next episode, which was actually the one after. So she got to say 2 back to back. It was All Hallowell's Eve. And she's like, this is why I don't write about time travel, because time travel is confusing. Which is fun. But then she loved the scattering of history, legend, and Halloween lore. She's found it very fun and educational. She's like, this show keeps surprising me. So her 4th episode that she watched was Long Live the Queen. And she commented on Phoebe's lore to the dark side. She's like, this is actually very refreshing because we all have that in us. And it's cool to see her go that way. Of course, by this point, we've seen her go that way quite a bit. But for her, this was new.
Yeah.
And then she loved how Cole was never quite good or evil and could never make that choice. And so she thought it was very admirable that even while he was being vanquished, he was still professing his love. And she's like, wow, what a very good character, a very, nuanced character. And I can agree with that. I think Cole does get a lot of hate. I hate that he gets so much love now. But I need the balance. I need people to understand the character for what he is, not for his like ooh la las.
Ooh la las.
And then she mentioned the bed scene at the end when all the sisters are in bed crying without any words, and she's like, I cried my eyes out.
I know, and that came up in a few essays throughout this whole book.
Yeah. And then her 5th episode was way in the future. She went from 3 and 4 episodes all the way to a season 7 episode.
Zanku Chicken.
Zanku Chicken. She watched Witness Protection, season 7, episode 10. And she and she had no idea what was going on, which I thought was hilarious. I'm actually going to read this section because I think it's funny. Okay. The Steer and Phoebe hit it off on the fashion level, bringing the lighter moments to the episode. And then Q showed up. I was not a Star Trek fan, but I'm like, I get that reference because we talked about it on the other show. She's like, I wonder whatever happened to him. He's an elder now. The uber evil Zanku was loose and sucking up other demons' abilities like nobody's business. You ever notice that it's really hard to take an evil guy seriously when he's insanely good looking? Really, really ridiculously good looking. Brody, no idea who he is, and Paige got hot and heavy, causing Paige to turn against her sisters. The 3 of them can battle demons without blinking an eye, but a lover never fails to screw everything up. Leo had become an avatar, whatever that is, but were they good or bad? Ooh, forget that. He didn't tell Piper he was an avatar. Bad hubby move, Leo. There's not a demon alive or dead more dangerous than a scorned wife. Shortly thereafter, the seer got fried, but not before leaving a cryptic vision with Phoebe. Is it my imagination or did the line, not since the Avatar, sound a little, I don't know, ambiguous to anyone besides me? Peace on Earth? Hello? We all know that's not going to work.
Yep.
But where does that leave our sisters? If they don't join forces if they don't join forces, they will never know if they missed the one shot at peace for themselves and the rest of us. On the other hand, if they unite with the Avatars and defeat the demons and the elders, and then the Avatars turn out to be psychos, the Charmed Ones will end up having to find a way to defeat the Avatars solo, since the other factions have been removed. At the end of the episode, they call the mysterious Avatars to hear them out. I blame this misguided decision on demon fatigue. However, one thing I've noticed about sisters is that they are smarter than your average demon. I don't worry about them too much. Unless, of course, this is the end of the series. I mean, what would the sisters do if every demon were vanquished? Their lives would be boring. Just like, really? We can't have that. There are already enough bad reality shows on the air. Okay, everyone is root for the Avatars to be evil, and we'll watch next week to see what happens.
And it's cute that she did get something from every episode, even though she had no idea what the hell was going on.
Yeah. I mean, that was really cool. And I feel like Charmed has that magical aspect to it. Like, you can be sucked into whatever. And I know in the beginning that they were designed that way, so you can watch it any order. That's what Aaron Spelling's goal. But I think there's enough for you to be sucked in no matter where you start. And that's because we've had people on the show who started all different phases. They see one episode random and then like, I need to watch the rest of this show now. I need to figure out what this is all about. And so it gives you that. So then her last phase of this essay was phase 3, her final answer on the show. She says the sisters really are the core, obviously. And then she found that when she watched it, her analytical brain shut off and she became engrossed and rooted for them, just like we talked about. She used to just like being ready to say something cynical or like call it out, but she just lost herself in it, which was cool. And she says the real reason why the show is successful is because we all have demons in life, and watching the show kind of got us to relate to our own demons, and we got to watch the Charmed Ones take their own demons on with courage, attitude, and each other, which seduced her. So yes.
Yeah.
So final thoughts on this section or the book as a whole?
I do like in this section that all 3 women got the same thing, that the show works because of the sisters' bond, which of course we know, but like it's just cool to see, all 3 of them came in from different aspects. The first writer, Valerie, came in like just wanting a campy show, and she ended up like teaching her daughter life.
Right.
And the second one, she's very cynical, and she came in ready to hate it, and like she ended up loving it, even though it doesn't always like make sense. And same with this last writer, she was surprised by how emotional she got and how attached she got. So it does go to show the power of Charmed. I think the main thing throughout this whole book that I would have liked to see more of is what we talked about, more targeted essays, have a man writer in the men's section, show the power of male fans, because there wasn't a lot of male voices in this, which I'm glad that it is more female than male, but it would have been nice to celebrate the males that do like the female show, at least a little bit.
I feel like we only had I can only think of 2 male writers in this whole essay, in this whole book.
Yeah.
Out of however many are essays, that's kind of a bad ratio.
Yeah. But overall, it was a cool book. I liked learning from different people what charm means for them. And of course, like, it did mean something to us because we got very emotional reading. We got very angry at some of them, and we really liked some of them. So that just means we're passionate too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like when we first started this book, I was very excited because we had some pretty cool and profound essays in the beginning. We're like, oh yeah, okay, this is going to be a good book. And then as it progressed, the essays became kind of more inconsequential and maddening.
Yeah. It was a slow descent into madness.
I was like, oh. I mean, there were several instances of claims that made no sense. And I don't think I like Jennifer Cruz as an editor either, because she is very much a casual, maybe even less than casual fan, given her frequent distaste of the series. So I feel like she was a weird choice.
Yeah.
She wrote the introduction, but I'm kind of glad she didn't write an actual essay, because I would have been like wanted to punch her in the face.
Canonical.
There's enough canonical errors in that as introduction. Funny enough, this section didn't have any canonical errors, so give it to the newbies for not having to mess it up.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. This final section was better, and I think a more interesting note to end on. So, because I liked hearing others' takes and first-time experiences with the show. Yeah, it does bother me a little bit that they were all forced into it by Jennifer Cruz. But hey, thanks for sharing the show.
3 new fans.
Yeah. And I did think this last essay was like a beautiful way to end. So, ta-da. Tips for future white letters.
Oh, we're really just messengers? Guides? Think of us as guardian angels for good witches.
Tips for future white letters.
I was out being a force of good in the universe.
What's your moral for this?
My moral is there's always time for Charmed.
Absolutely. I used to have a shirt that said I'd rather be watching Charmed. One of those kind of things. And my tip is very basic and fun too. It's view or not to view. That is the question.
Wait, did you just call my tip basic? Is that what just happened? You called my basic?
All right. So the last thing of this section is the P is for poll.
Piper.
You mean it's just you and Prue, huh?
Phoebe? Phoebe, you there?
And a big hello to you too, Penny.
Come on, Patty. The rest is up to them.
Paige. My name is Paige.
Another P, imagine that.
P is for poll. How old were you when you started watching Charmed? So these are the options. I mean, you can give me an exact age because you're here, but for the poll, I put under 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 49, that's a big range, and then 50 or over. So,
Wow, I'm just thinking of when I started it. That was 7 years ago now.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. I was 33. I was 33.
33. Yeah. I was 10. So yeah, it's me a fun little, it's just me a fun little statistics to see, I think, next week. When we start a new book. Oh my gosh, we finished this book, Sean.
Yay. I was kind of getting to the point where I was ready to. I'm kind of glad. Like, it's not that I didn't like it. It's just I'm ready to move to something else.
I'm finding that, having all these weeks back to back because we break it into sections, get tired of it, I think, a lot faster because you're like, oh, we're still on this book.
Yeah.
Versus if we just, did it all at once, foul swoop. It does add a level of like feeling like you're moving slow.
True.
Next book we're covering is Triquetra, and it covers the first 7 seasons. I don't know how our layout is going to be. I don't know how we're going to approach the episodes yet because every medium changes our structure a bit. But we'll go and we're going to do an episode for each season that's in there and see how it goes.
Cool.
So until that time, Spellworders, Sean, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Sean Perrette on Instagram and TikTok. That'll lead you to my concert videos. That'll lead you to our Solving for X, an X-Men Task podcast, which we do together, where we are currently on X-Men Evolution and any other projects that I have.
Yeah. And you can follow me, KJEEZY87 on Instagram. Follow this podcast at Words of the Witches on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Words of Witches on Twitter. Yes. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Spellworders, thanks for listening.
Blah.
Your destiny still awaits. Happy Halloween, even though it just passed.